"Be quiet," the waitress whispered and kissed her billionaire boss to save his life, but then everything changed. Before we begin, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us continue the story. The chandeliers of the Grand Oak Ballroom glowed like molten gold that winter night in 1977, pouring warm light over velvet drapes, polished walnut walls, and guests dressed in satin and tailored suits. A jazz quartet played near the far corner, their brass notes drifting through the crowd like smoke. Waitresses moved between tables with silver trays, but one of them kept glancing toward the balcony above the orchestra. Emilia Evans, 22, white, her blonde hair tucked neatly beneath her headband, felt the air change before she understood why. The ballroom was supposed to feel elegant, but to her, it felt tight, tense, alive with something she could not name. Adrian DeLuca, the billionaire owner of the DeLuca Group, stood near the center of the room, tall and poised in a classic black tuxedo. He spoke with two board members, unaware that a man in a gray security uniform hovered just a little too close behind him, pretending to check wall sconces while slipping a small metallic device from his sleeve. Emilia saw the glint, barely more than a flicker beneath the chandelier light, but enough to freeze her in place. She had overheard whispers earlier in the hallway, whispers about gathering evidence, about bringing him down tonight. She did not know what it meant. She only knew danger when she felt it. Her breath caught. She moved quickly through the guests, weaving between the clink of glasses and the murmur of conversations. When she reached Adrian, she grabbed his wrist, startling him. His deep brown eyes narrowed with confusion, but she did not give him time to question her. She pulled him through a gap in the crowd, past a row of marble pillars, and into the shadowed space behind a heavy burgundy curtain. The music softened there, replaced by the muffled thrum of her heartbeat. Adrian opened his mouth to speak, but she placed a hand on his chest and whispered, "Be quiet." Her voice trembled, not with fear of him, but with fear of what was about to happen on the other side of that curtain. Footsteps approached. Someone was searching. Someone who had seen her pull Adrian away. Emilia's fingers shook as she reached up, and before she lost her nerve, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. It was not a romantic kiss. It was a shield, a distraction, a silent plea for him to trust her for just a moment. Adrian stiffened, shocked, but the footsteps paused, then moved on, fooled by the intimate silhouette cast on the wall. The danger passed as quietly as it had come, but the air between them shifted into something charged and impossible to name. When Emilia pulled away, her breath trembled against the cold velvet behind her. Adrian stared at her, stunned, searching her face for answers. His voice dropped low. "What are you doing?" She swallowed hard. "Saving your life. I think someone is trying to hurt you." Before he could respond, the ballroom erupted in applause for the next speech, a burst of sound that broke the fragile silence between them. Emilia stepped back, her hand still trembling. She did not realize that in one impulsive moment, she had crossed the line between the world she belonged to and the world he ruled. That kiss was only the beginning of everything that would change. Let us return to our main character. The applause from the ballroom slowly faded behind Emilia as she slipped out from the curtain and returned to the service floor, her tray gripped so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her heartbeat was still uneven, still echoing the moment her lips had touched Adrian DeLuca's. She could feel the warmth of his breath lingering, a confusing reminder of what she had done. She had no idea what that single moment would cost her, but she knew one thing clearly. She could not lose this job. Not when her mother's medical bills were piling up, not when the landlord had already warned her twice about late payments, not when she had no other path forward. She steadied her breathing and moved between tables, forcing herself to focus. But the weight of Adrian's gaze kept following her, even when she refused to look up. Later that night, when the gala ended and the chandeliers dimmed one by one, Emilia walked out through the back entrance of the Grand Oak Ballroom into the winter air. The cold bit at her cheeks as she wrapped her coat tighter and crossed the parking lot. Snow dusted the ground like powdered sugar. She hurried to catch the last bus, but as she reached the stop, the headlights disappeared down the street before she could wave it down. She cursed under her breath and began the long walk toward the old diner where she worked a second shift. Neon lights flickered above the windows, bathing the sidewalk in red and blue. Inside, the smell of coffee, cooking oil, and aging leather booths wrapped around her like an old blanket. She sat at the counter and ordered a grilled cheese sandwich she could barely afford, staring down at the hospital invoice folded inside her apron pocket. The numbers felt heavier each time she read them. She ran her thumb over the edge of the paper and whispered to herself, "Just one more month. I can make it one more month." At nearly midnight, she returned to her small apartment on the third floor of a weathered brick building. The hall smelled faintly of old smoke and dust, and the heater rattled as if protesting every breath it took. Her older sister, Claire, waited by the door with crossed arms and tired eyes. "The landlord came again," Claire said. "He said if we do not pay by Friday, he will change the locks." Emilia nodded quietly and set the invoice on the table beside a burnt-out lamp. She wanted to scream, cry, or collapse, but none of that would bring in money. She went to the fireplace at the end of the hallway, where tenants sometimes gathered for warmth. The flames crackled weakly as she warmed her hands, staring into the flickering amber glow. She replayed the ballroom in her mind. The device. The security guard. The danger she had sensed. And the way Adrian had looked at her afterward, as if he understood something had shifted. When the sun rose hours later, she dressed in her waitress uniform again and headed toward the DeLuca mansion for her morning shift. Snow crunched under her shoes as she walked up the long driveway lined with winter-bare oak trees. Inside, the mansion was quiet, warm, and almost intimidating in its grandeur. She passed through the foyer and into the library, where dark walnut shelves stretched floor to ceiling and colored glass windows painted soft patterns on the carpet. She paused only a moment before approaching the small service station near the far wall. Her job was simple this morning. Prepare the coffee tray for Adrian's private study. As she reached for the silver pot, a faint metallic glint caught her eye near the edge of the rug. She crouched and picked up a button. A heavy, dark button with an engraved emblem. It was not from a guest's coat. It was not from staff uniforms. It belonged to one type of outfit in the mansion. Security. Her breath caught as she held it up to the light. It matched the uniform of the guard she had seen the previous night. The same guard who had hovered behind Adrian. The same man she believed was involved in the plan to sabotage him. This button was not just fabric. It was evidence. Evidence that could destroy her or protect her, depending on who she trusted. Emilia looked toward the double doors of Adrian's study. She could hear faint movement inside, the shuffle of papers, the clink of a pen being set down. She knew she should leave the tray quietly and walk away. She knew approaching him could risk everything. But she also knew that if she did nothing, he might be walking into danger again. She tightened her grip around the button, feeling its cold metal press into her skin. She took one slow breath, then another, and stepped toward the doors. She did not know it yet, but this moment would be the second time within 24 hours that she would cross the invisible line between their worlds. The line that wealth, fear, and secrets had drawn. And this time, the consequences would reach far deeper than a kiss behind a velvet curtain. Emilia hesitated outside the double doors of Adrian's study, the silver tray balanced carefully in one hand and the dark security button clenched in the other. The hallway was silent except for the soft hum of the mansion's old heating system, a low vibration that made the colored glass windows tremble ever so slightly. Snowlight filtered through them, casting patches of pale blue and amber across the floor. Emilia took a breath, then nudged the door with her shoulder. It opened just enough for her to slip inside. Adrian DeLuca stood near the window, his back to her, reviewing a stack of documents illuminated by the morning light. He looked impossibly composed, the kind of controlled elegance that always made Emilia painfully aware of the distance between their worlds. She placed the tray on the side table, but the small clink of porcelain made him turn. His eyes met hers immediately, steady and unreadable. "Good morning, Emilia," he said. "You are earlier than usual." She almost answered politely, but the button in her fist pressed deeper into her palm, pushing her toward the truth. She stepped forward and held it out. "I found this in the library," she said. "It belongs to your security team." The man last night dropped it. His expression shifted, just slightly, a microscopic crack in his composure. He took the button from her slowly, as though it was something fragile. "You are certain?" She nodded. "I saw him near you at the ballroom." "Too close." He was holding a device. I did not know how to explain it without sounding insane. Adrian studied her for a long moment, the tension in the room tightening like a wire. Then, without a word, he crossed the study and opened a drawer, producing a file stamped with the DeLuca Group emblem. He laid the button beside it and exhaled a deep breath that sounded almost tired. "I had suspicions," he admitted. "Whispers of internal sabotage, strange reports, information leaks. But I did not know who." Emilia swallowed. "I should have told you sooner." "No," Adrian said firmly. "You acted faster than anyone else. You protected me." His voice softened in a way that made something warm ripple in her chest, but before she could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the hall. The study door swung open as Marcus Hale, the head of security, strode inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a dark uniform with polished brass buttons. His face tightened when he saw Emilia standing beside Adrian. "Sir," Marcus said, "I need a word." "Privately." Adrian's tone turned cold. "Anything you can say to me, you can say in front of Emilia." Marcus looked displeased by that answer, but he pushed forward. "Last night, one of my men was attacked and claims your waitress was involved. He says she pulled you away from the event to isolate you." Emilia's heart thudded painfully. Adrian stepped forward. "Is that the story he is telling?" Marcus narrowed his eyes. "It is his report." Adrian placed the button on the desk between them. "Then explain this." Marcus froze. His face paled. The air thickened. "That is a uniform button," he stammered. "Anyone could have picked it up." Emilia bristled, but Adrian raised a hand to silence her. He leaned closer to Marcus. "Your man has been missing since dawn. This button was found near my private library, which he had no clearance to access. Perhaps you would like to amend his story before I contact the police." Marcus swallowed but did not answer. Instead, he glanced briefly at Emilia, his eyes dark and calculating, before backing toward the door. "I will investigate further," he muttered, then slipped out with a stiffness that revealed more than words could. The room fell silent again. Emilia suddenly felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. "He will blame me," she whispered. "People like him always blame the easiest target." Adrian turned toward her. "Then I will make certain you are not the target." His voice was calm but edged with something protective, something she had not heard from him before. He picked up the button and placed it gently into her hand. "Keep this with you. It proves you are telling the truth." She stared at the metal circle resting in her palm, feeling the stakes rise around her like a tightening storm. A soft knock interrupted them again. This time it was Marlene, the mansion's elderly housekeeper, carrying a folder tied with string. "Sir," she said softly, "maintenance found something unusual on the ballroom stage lights. You asked to be notified." Adrian took the folder and opened it. Inside were photographs of wiring that had been cut deliberately, and a small device taped beneath a lighting panel. Emilia felt her stomach twist. She remembered the man in grey standing near the stage earlier that evening. Adrian closed the folder. "This confirms sabotage," he said. "And it confirms someone wants me out of my own company." Emilia took a slow breath. "What happens now?" Adrian looked at her with steady resolve, the kind of quiet authority that made the mansion feel smaller around him. "Now," he said, "we find out who is behind all of this. And you, Emilia Evans, are not stepping out of my sight. His words landed between them with a weight she did not yet understand. She only knew that whatever danger was coming, she had crossed another line. And she could no longer go back. The morning deepened into a grey winter afternoon as Adrian led Emilia through the wide hallway that connected the study to the older wing of the mansion. The stained glass windows cast fractured bands of colour over the floor, shifting with every step they took. Emilia held the button tightly in her hand, the cold metal warming slowly against her skin. She did not know what frightened her more, the idea that someone inside the DeLuca estate was plotting against Adrian, or the fact that she was now tangled in the middle of it. Her footsteps echoed softly beside his, but his stride was purposeful, sharp, as if each decision in his mind clicked into place with precise force. They reached the mansion's archival room, a long, narrow chamber lined with tall cabinets of walnut drawers. The air smelled faintly of dust and old paper. Adrian pushed open the double doors and flicked on the brass wall sconces, bathing the shelves in warm light. This room is where all employee records, contracts, and internal reports are stored, he said. If there is a pattern or a leak, it will show up here. Emilia nodded, though she felt out of place among the rows of polished cabinets. She had never been inside any part of the mansion except the service hallways and the kitchen. Standing here beside Adrian felt like stepping over a boundary she had never intended to cross. He opened a drawer labeled Security, 1975 to present and pulled out a stack of files. Sit here, he said, motioning to a small oak desk near the wall. Look for discrepancies in shift assignments, anything unusual in incident reports, or any complaints that seem inconsistent. She sat carefully, smoothing her apron, and began to read. The files were thick, filled with typed pages, handwritten notes, and stamped approvals. As she flipped through them, something became clear. Several reports were signed by the same guard who had dropped the button, but the signatures were inconsistent, as if they had been rushed or forged over time. Her brows tightened. She slid the folder toward Adrian. Look at this, she said. The signatures do not match. And some of these reports are duplicates. Adrian studied the pages, his jaw tightening. Someone has been fabricating paperwork, he said. And they have been doing it for months. Before he could say more, the door to the archival room creaked open. Emilia's breath hitched as Marlene, the housekeeper, stepped inside. She held a tray with 2 cups of tea, her hands trembling slightly. Sir, she said, I thought you both might need something warm. She placed the tray on the desk, but her eyes lingered on the files in front of them. There are things happening in this house that do not feel right, she whispered. People moving around at strange hours. Lights on in rooms that should be empty. Emilia looked up sharply. Did you see anyone near the library last night? Marlene hesitated, then nodded. A man in a grey uniform. He was near the west hallway, but when I called out, he hurried away. Adrian exchanged a look with Emilia. This was confirmation. He stood and motioned for both women to follow. They walked through the hallway toward the west wing, the older part of the mansion built in the early 20th century. The air was cooler here, and the floorboards creaked under their steps. At the end of the corridor was a narrow service door. Adrian opened it and flicked on the light. The staircase beyond led downward into a dim basement lined with brick walls. Emilia's breath caught. What is down there? Records, utilities, Adrian said. And spaces that have not been used in years. They descended carefully, the wooden steps groaning under their weight. A faint hum of electricity filled the air, mixed with the lingering scent of oil and cold stone. At the bottom, they emerged into a wide maintenance corridor with old boilers and dusty shelves. But one detail stood out immediately. A single workbench near the far wall was clean, organized, and obviously used recently. Tools lay neatly arranged. On the bench sat a small transmitter device identical to the one Emilia had seen hidden behind the ballroom curtain. Adrian stepped closer, his face tightening with recognition. This is not standard equipment, he said. This is how they tracked me. Emilia felt her stomach twist. He was working down here, she whispered. Right under your roof. Adrian scanned the table. He had help, he said quietly. Someone with authority to access restricted areas. This is more than a rogue guard. A sudden clatter echoed down the corridor. Emilia froze. Adrian moved instinctively, stepping in front of her, his posture tense. Footsteps pounded on the stairs above, quick and heavy. Then the service door slammed shut. The sound reverberated through the basement like a warning. Emilia felt her pulse race as the weight of danger settled around them. Someone knew they were here. Someone who was watching. And someone who did not want them to leave. The basement corridor fell silent after the slam of the service door, the echo stretching through the underground space like a warning that refused to fade. Emilia felt her breath lodge in her chest as she stared at the staircase above. Whoever had closed that door was not just retreating. They were trapping them. Adrian stepped forward, testing the lower steps with the heel of his shoe, but the moment he placed pressure on the first plank, it groaned sharply. He stopped. The staircase is unstable, he said. If someone tampered with the wiring upstairs, they could tamper with this too. Emilia's pulse throbbed in her neck. Then we cannot go up, she whispered. Adrian turned to her, the dim basement light carving sharp edges along his jaw. We will find another exit. Basements built in the early 20th century often have secondary doors for coal delivery or maintenance staff. He moved down the corridor, scanning the brick walls for any sign of a concealed path. Emilia stayed close behind him, her fingers brushing the rough stone as she tried to steady herself. The deeper they walked, the colder the air became, until she could see the faintest cloud of her breath in the dim light. They passed old boilers with labels rusted beyond recognition, stacks of crates filled with outdated wiring, and long-forgotten tools that had not been touched in decades. Yet amid the relics, something modern gleamed. A small square box mounted high on the wall, its red light blinking steadily. Emilia pointed up at it. That is a sensor, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian narrowed his eyes. Someone installed surveillance down here. Without my approval. Emilia looked around, suddenly aware that they might not be alone. Do you think someone is watching us right now? He did not answer, but the tension in his expression said enough. They turned a corner and entered a narrow passage where the bricks darkened with old water stains. Far ahead, a faint draft pushed through the darkness. There is an exit nearby, Adrian said. But before they could continue, a metallic clatter sounded behind them, sharp and sudden, like someone kicking a pipe. Emilia spun around, her heart racing. Who is there? Only silence answered. Then, from somewhere beyond the old furnace room, footsteps retreated with hurried, uneven rhythm. They were not heavy enough to be Marcus Hale. Not confident enough to be the guard from the ballroom. These footsteps belonged to someone who did not want to be seen. A shadow. A watcher. A participant in a plan that was unfolding faster than Emilia could comprehend. Adrian placed a steady hand on her arm. Come, he said. We should not stay in one place. They moved deeper until they reached the source of the draft, a small metal door near floor level, half rusted and nearly hidden by a row of old coal bins. Adrian crouched and tugged at the latch. It resisted at first, but with a sharp pull, it gave way. Cold air rushed inside, carrying the scent of winter pine and snow. This leads to the side of the estate, he said. We can get out through here. Emilia hesitated, glancing back down the dim corridor as if expecting the footsteps to return. Do you think they know about this door? If they did, Adrian said, they would have blocked it. He climbed out first, then reached back to help her. She grasped his hand, feeling the warmth of his grip contrast with the icy air outside. They emerged behind the mansion near the overgrown service grounds where broken stone paths and old garden walls stood forgotten beneath the snow. The sky had darkened into early evening, and the first stars shimmered faintly above the treetops. We should alert someone, Emilia said. The police, or someone you trust. Adrian shook his head. Not yet. If there is internal corruption, involving the police before we have proof could alert the wrong people. For now, we gather evidence. We stay cautious. And you stay where I can see you. Before Emilia could respond, a soft crunch echoed behind them. She turned sharply. A figure darted between the trees, too distant to identify but close enough to witness their escape. The person paused just long enough to make eye contact with Adrian, then vanished into the shadows of the forest. Emilia felt a chill crawl across her shoulders. "Who was that?" she whispered. Adrian's expression hardened with resolve. "Someone who does not want us discovering the truth." He placed a firm hand on her back and guided her toward the side entrance of the mansion. "We are no longer dealing with suspicion. We are dealing with a conspiracy." Inside, the hallway lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Emilia could not shake the sense that the walls themselves were listening. Adrian led her toward the library, where the documents they had gathered earlier waited on the desk. "We continue from here," he said. "We find the link between the forged reports, the missing guard, and the devices planted in the ballroom and basement." He paused and looked at her with unexpected gentleness. "And Emilia, whatever happens next, you are not facing this alone." She felt the weight of those words settle deep within her, heavier than the danger surrounding them. She knew the line between their worlds was fading faster with each step they took. And the truth waiting for them in the shadows would not stay hidden much longer. The library felt heavier when Emilia and Adrian stepped back inside, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the tension from the basement. The fire in the stone hearth had burned low, casting soft flickers of amber light across the walnut shelves. Emilia brushed snow from her sleeves and moved toward the oak desk where the files lay open. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the realization that the danger beneath the mansion had been real, immediate, and far closer than either of them had expected. Adrian closed the door behind them and turned the key, securing the room with a quiet click. The gesture was subtle but told Emilia everything. They could not risk being overheard, not even here. Adrian stepped beside her, scanning the documents that showed forged signatures, duplicated reports, and inconsistencies that no legitimate security officer would ignore. He tapped a page with the back of his knuckle. "This pattern began 6 months ago," he said. "Right when the company's acquisition deal started. Gaining attention." Emilia leaned closer, reading the notes. "So the sabotage is connected to the deal?" He nodded. "Someone wants to destabilize the leadership before the final vote. If I look incompetent or compromised, the board could force me out." Emilia felt her chest tighten. "And last night," she whispered, "the device in the ballroom was meant to create exactly that illusion." Adrian exhaled slowly, pressing his hands to the edge of the desk. "They are orchestrating a narrative. A careless executive. A reckless scandal. Enough to shake investor confidence." The sound of footsteps approached outside the door, then passed. Emilia stiffened, instinctively stepping closer to Adrian. He glanced toward the hallway, then returned his focus to the documents, though the tension in his shoulders did not lessen. "We must identify who had access to both restricted areas and the ballroom," he said. "Only a handful of staff could move freely between them without raising suspicion." Emilia hesitated, then pointed to a column in the files. "These names repeat often," she said. "Shift leaders. Senior guards. A few administrative coordinators." As Adrian traced the list, his finger paused over one name. Marcus Hale. Emilia felt her breath catch. "You think it is him?" Adrian shook his head. "I think he knows more than he is admitting. But he is not cautious enough to forge signatures this cleanly. Someone else is handling the paperwork." The library door rattled suddenly, as if someone had tried the handle. Emilia's eyes widened. Adrian held up a hand for silence, the fire popping behind them. After a long moment, the pressure on the handle eased, and the footsteps retreated. Emilia released a shaky breath. "This house does not feel safe anymore," she whispered. Adrian looked at her with a softened expression. "It is not the house," he said quietly. It is the people who believe they own part of my future. The phrasing lingered in the air, weighted with unspoken fear. Unspoken guilt. An unspoken concern for her. Adrian gathered the documents and stacked them neatly. We need to cross-reference these reports with the company's financial statements, he said. If someone inside is coordinating sabotage, there may be unusual transfers or payments. He moved toward the adjoining study, where a large mahogany desk stood beneath a row of framed photographs from earlier decades. Emilia followed, noticing one picture of a younger Adrian standing beside his late father, both in suits, both unsmiling. She sensed old pressure in that image, a legacy of expectation pressed into the corners of his life. Adrian retrieved a thick binder from the desk drawer and placed it beside the security files. Emilia leaned over the pages, helping him sort through entries, dates, and signatures. After several minutes, she froze. "Look at this," she said, pointing at a transaction record. This vendor was paid twice in the same week, with different authorization signatures. Adrian's eyes narrowed sharply. "That signature is falsified," he said. "And this dealer has ties to signal equipment manufacturers." Emilia blinked. "You mean the devices we found?" Adrian nodded. "This confirms financial involvement." Before they could examine more, the lights flickered overhead, dimming for a moment as if the mansion's power grid had been disrupted. Emilia instinctively stepped back. "Do you think someone is tampering with the lights?" "No," Adrian said, though his voice carried the weight of doubt. "But nothing in this house tonight feels accidental." He closed the binder and turned toward her. His expression softened, the tension in his eyes melting into something warmer, gentler. "You have helped uncover more in one day than my entire team has managed in weeks." Emilia felt heat rise in her cheeks, though she kept her voice steady. "I am only doing what I believe is right." "You are doing far more than that," he said. His voice held sincerity that made her heart flutter. In the soft glow of the library's fading fire, he looked different from the billionaire she had served coffee to for months. Less distant. Less untouchable. More human. The moment thickened between them, suspended by things neither dared say aloud. But it broke when a deep chime echoed through the mansion. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 6 times, each toll rolling through the walls like a warning. Emilia turned toward the sound. "What does that mean?" Adrian stepped closer to the door, listening carefully. "It means the mansion is now in nighttime lockdown," he said. "And whoever is working against us will realize soon that we're getting closer to the truth." He turned back to her, his gaze steady and protective. "Stay with me, Emilia. Tonight is far from over." The echo of the grandfather clock faded into the long hallway outside the library, leaving a heavy stillness suspended between Emilia and Adrian. The mansion seemed to breathe around them, its chandeliers humming with low electricity as the nighttime lockdown sealed every external door. Emilia felt a tightness form in her chest, a fragile reminder that she was now trapped inside a labyrinth built for a billionaire but haunted by danger. Adrian placed a reassuring hand at the small of her back, guiding her toward the study where additional documents waited beneath the desk lamp's soft glow. "We need to dig deeper before whoever is behind this realizes we are ahead of them," he said. His tone was steady, but there was something underneath it, something protective and quietly urgent. They sat side by side at the mahogany desk, flipping through pages detailing vendor payments, floor access logs, and correspondence from various departments. Emilia noticed that every time the lights flickered or the old mansion creaked, Adrian's eyes shifted toward the doorway, as if expecting an intruder. The closeness between them grew heavier with each passing minute. She had never been alone with him for this long in such a confined, intimate atmosphere, lit only by a lamp and the glow of burning embers from the library's fireplace. She forced herself to focus on the immediate task, tracing her finger down a column of dates. "Look at this entry," she said. "A payment authorized to an outside consultant 3 nights before the first forged report." Adrian leaned closer, studying the page. "This consultant is a shell identity. The address does not exist." Their voices hovered inches apart. Emilia could feel the warmth of his breath on her cheek. She pulled back slightly, her heart pounding harder than the investigation warranted. Before Adrian could speak again, a loud thud reverberated from upstairs, as if something heavy had dropped onto the hardwood floor. Emilia flinched. Adrian stood immediately, his expression sharp. "Stay behind me," he said. They moved cautiously into the hallway. The mansion sconces flickered again, casting long shadows along the walls. Another thud followed, this one closer to the staircase. Emilia grabbed Adrian's sleeve. "It sounds like someone is searching the rooms." Adrian nodded. "Or destroying evidence." They made their way toward the central staircase, where the balusters were carved with ornate oak leaves and vines. A faint trail of footprints, smudged with melted snow, led up the steps. Adrian's eyes darkened. Someone from outside should not be able to enter. During lockdown. Emilia followed carefully as they climbed the stairs. The upper hallway was dim, lit only by the moonlight slicing through the tall windows. They passed the guest rooms, each door closed, nothing out of place. But when they reached the far end of the corridor, a warm light flickered from the cracked doorway of Adrian's private office. Adrian motioned for Emilia to stay back, then pushed the door open. Inside, drawers hung open, papers scattered across the floor. The lamp on his desk had been knocked sideways, its shade dented. Emilia stepped beside him, her breath uneven. Someone was looking for something, she whispered. Adrian scanned the mess. They knew exactly which room to target. They were searching for files. Suddenly, a faint click sounded behind them, as if someone had stepped on a loose board. Adrian spun around. A figure darted down the hallway. "Wait!" Adrian called, rushing after the shadow. Emilia hurried behind him, her shoes clicking against the wooden floor. The figure disappeared into the stairwell that led to the ground floor. Adrian took the steps two at a time while Emilia followed, gripping the banister for balance. When they reached the foyer, the figure was gone, but the cold draft suggested the person had slipped through a ventilation access panel near the floor, one that would lead into the inner walls of the mansion. "They know this house too well," Adrian said. Emilia swallowed, her nerves frayed. "It must be someone on your staff." Adrian exhaled sharply. "This stops tonight." He guided her back toward the main hall, then paused beneath the chandelier. His expression shifted, no longer only focused on the threat around them. There was something vulnerable there, something he rarely showed. "Emilia," he said softly, "I need you to understand something. You are involved because you told the truth when no one else did. Not because I want you in danger." She met his gaze, her stomach tightening, her voice barely steady. "I came here because no one else believed what I saw. And because you trusted me." The unsaid words hung between them like a fragile thread. The moment was interrupted by a sharp ringing from the mansion's internal phone system, echoing through the hall. Adrian answered it. A low, distorted voice whispered through the receiver, "You should have stayed out of this." Then the line cut. Silence fell again. Heavy and suffocating. Emilia felt the hairs on her arms rise. Adrian set the receiver down slowly. "They are warning us," he said. "Which means we are close." He turned to her, the softness gone, replaced by determination. "We will find them. But first, we gather every piece of evidence. And we do it together." Emilia nodded, though fear churned inside her. She knew what those words meant. The night was not nearing its end. It was only crossing into its most dangerous hour. The hall remained quiet after the phone call, but the quiet no longer felt like safety, it felt like a warning wrapped in stillness. Emilia watched Adrian set the receiver back onto its cradle, his expression carved with a determination that looked both fierce and wounded. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The chandelier above them hummed softly, the glow from its bulbs reflecting off the polished floor in trembling patterns. Emilia stepped closer, her voice hardly more than a breath. "What do we do now?" Adrian turned toward her, the tension in his shoulders breaking just enough to reveal the weight he carried. Now, he said, we take control back. He led her through the mansion toward the ballroom, his stride measured yet urgent. Emilia followed, the echo of their footsteps stretching behind them through the long corridor. The ballroom doors stood half open, revealing the vast room that had been filled with music and glittering light the night before. Now it was empty, dimly lit by the sconces along the walls. The grand chandeliers hung silently above the polished floor. Adrian flipped on the stage lights, examining the area where the first device had been discovered. Emilia walked beside him, scanning the curtains, the lighting panel, and the narrow wings where performers and staff moved during events. Adrian opened the maintenance panel beneath the stage, wires spilled out in messy clusters, some sliced cleanly. They were planning a blackout, he said. A staged malfunction during the gala. Something that would humiliate me in front of shareholders. Emilia leaned closer, noticing a strip of tape with faint residue on it. The transmitter must have been attached here, she said. Adrian nodded. And removed quickly once they realized the timing was wrong. He stood up, brushing dust from his hands. They were watching us last night. They saw you pull me away. The thought made Emilia's stomach knot. Do you think they know I can identify the guard? They know more than that, Adrian said. They know you have evidence. The weight of his words pressed against her chest. She turned toward the sweeping staircase at the back of the ballroom. Its steps led to the balcony overlooking the floor. What if someone is up there right now, she whispered. Adrian followed her gaze, then ascended the stairs with careful steps. Emilia trailed close behind, staying near the balustrade carved with wooden vines. At the top, the balcony stretched wide and shadowed. Adrian examined the rows of chairs and the equipment table near the rail. Nothing seemed disturbed. But as Emilia approached the last row, a loose sheet of paper caught her eye, half-tucked beneath a chair leg. She bent down and pulled it free. Her breath stopped. Adrian, she said, her voice trembling. He stepped beside her. The paper was a printed agenda for the upcoming acquisition vote, with annotations scrawled in red ink. Public scandal, one note read. Expose recklessness, said another. But the line that chilled Emilia most was circled twice. Replace leadership permanently. Adrian took the page from her slowly. The anger in his eyes was controlled, but dangerous. They intend to destroy my position entirely. Before he could say more, footsteps echoed from the ballroom floor below. Emilia gasped and leaned over the balcony rail. Marcus Hale stood directly beneath them, scanning the room with calculated precision. He was alone. He looked up. His gaze locked onto theirs. Sir, he called, his voice rough and strangely calm, you should not be wandering the mansion tonight. Adrian stiffened. Are you giving me orders in my own home? Marcus offered a thin smile. I am offering advice. There are people here you should not trust. His eyes shifted toward Emilia. The insinuation was unmistakable. Emilia felt heat rush to her face, not from fear, but from injustice. Adrian stepped forward. You have no authority to speak about trust when your team is involved in a conspiracy. Marcus tilted his head. You are accusing the wrong people. Then explain the forged documents, Adrian said. Explain the missing guard. Explain the sabotage. Marcus did not flinch. I do not answer to accusations without proof. Adrian descended halfway down the stairs, placing himself between Marcus and Emilia. The proof will come. And when it does, I will make certain the board sees every detail. Marcus's smile faltered, revealing something colder beneath it. He stepped closer to the stairs, his boots echoing sharply across the marble floor. Be careful how you speak to me, Adrian. When the truth comes out, your position may not protect you. Emilia clutched the balcony rail. Leave, Adrian said. Now. Marcus held his stare for a long, charged moment before turning away and disappearing through the ballroom doors. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Emilia descended the stairs to meet Adrian at the bottom. He is involved, she whispered. I know it. Adrian looked at the agenda page in his hand. And now we know their goal. His voice steadied with resolve. We will expose them. But we need one final piece of evidence. Emilia swallowed. What piece? The identity of the person Marcus answers to, he said. The mastermind. The person who wants me gone. A distant creak echoed from the hallway beyond the ballroom. Emilia's pulse raced. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Stay close, he said. We are about to find out just how far this conspiracy reaches. The creak from the hallway beyond the ballroom carried through the air like a signal, faint yet unmistakable, pulling Emilia and Adrian toward the source with a mixture of dread and certainty. The chandeliers above trembled softly as they stepped into the long corridor, their shadows stretching ahead of them in thin, wavering lines. Adrian moved with steady purpose, his jaw set, the crumpled agenda page still clutched in his hand. Emilia stayed close, her pulse thudding beneath her ribs, the weight of the night pressing against her chest. Every instinct told her the truth was finally within reach, but truth, she knew, rarely arrived gently. As they reached the intersection where the West Wing met the administrative hall, the lights flickered again, this time longer and lower, casting the corridor into darkness before buzzing back to life in a weak glow. At the far end stood Marcus Hale, his uniform disheveled, his expression tense. But he was not alone. Beside him stood a man Emilia had never seen before, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, his eyes sharp behind rimmed glasses. He looked nothing like a guard, nor a servant, nor a staff member. He looked like a man who belonged in boardrooms where fortunes shifted with the stroke of a pen. Adrian stopped, his voice cold and controlled. Who is he? Marcus exhaled slowly, his shoulders sinking as if a long-hidden burden finally snapped. This is Leonard Graves, he said. Your father's former advisor. Emilia stiffened. Adrian's eyes narrowed. My father died 10 years ago. Why would his advisor be in my home during lockdown? Leonard stepped forward with a smooth, measured stride. Because your father and I built this empire together, he said, and you are destroying it. His voice carried arrogance, but also bitter conviction. You are too young, too reckless. The acquisition deal should have been postponed, yet you insisted on pushing it through. I cannot allow you to gamble with what generations built. Adrian's expression hardened. So you sabotaged the gala. You planted the devices. You forged the reports. Leonard smiled faintly. I ensured the board would see the truth. That you are unfit to lead. Emilia's breath caught. You were behind everything, she whispered. Leonard turned his gaze toward her with chilling ease. You should have stayed a waitress. Marcus shifted uneasily, his eyes flicking toward Emilia. There was something torn in his expression, something regretful. I did not know everything, Marcus muttered. I followed orders. Adrian stepped in front of Emilia instinctively. You endangered every person in this mansion, he said, his tone trembling with controlled fury. You threatened my staff, my future, my safety. Leonard raised an eyebrow. Leadership requires sacrifices. Emilia's voice broke through, trembling but unwavering. Leadership requires integrity. Leonard's eyes flashed with irritation. Adrian stepped closer, his presence radiating authority. The board will hear everything, he said. Every forged document, every planted device, every attempt to destroy me. Leonard's calm facade cracked. Do you think they will believe the word of a billionaire and his waitress? His emphasis sliced through the hall like a blade, but Adrian did not flinch. They will, he said, because we have proof. Emilia held up the security button, the forged documents, the annotated agenda page. Marcus closed his eyes, defeated. I will testify, he said quietly. Leonard turned on him sharply. You fool. But the fight was already over. The security lights down the corridor lit up as emergency protocols triggered. The mansion's power steadied. And at the far end, the police entered, summoned by the silent alarm Adrian had pressed when he answered the threatening phone call only minutes earlier. Officers moved swiftly, placing Leonard Graves in handcuffs as he spat accusations and promises of revenge. Marcus surrendered silently, his shoulders slumped in resignation. When the hallway finally cleared, the mansion fell into a deep, exhausted quiet. Emilia exhaled shakily, leaning against the wall. Adrian approached her slowly, the tension in his face melting into something soft and grateful. "You saved me," he said. "Not once. Not twice. But over and over again." She shook her head. "I just did what was right." Adrian lifted her chin gently. "You were brave when I was blind. You saw danger when I refused to. And you believed in me before anyone else did." Emilia's breath trembled as he stepped closer, the warmth of his presence dissolving the last of her fear. "Adrian," she whispered, unsure of what he would say next. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, his voice low. "The moment you pulled me behind that curtain, I thought you were saving me from a scandal. I did not realize you were saving my entire life." Emilia felt her heart swell, fragile and full. Adrian's hand moved to her waist, his eyes searching hers with quiet certainty. "Stay," he whispered. "Not because of what happened tonight, but because I want you in my life. Truly. Publicly. Without fear." She hesitated only long enough to feel the truth settle inside her. Then she nodded. "I will stay." Adrian pulled her into his arms, the chaos of the night dissolving into warmth and relief. The mansion, once filled with shadows and secrets, now felt like a place reborn. As the first light of dawn crept through the stained glass windows, painting the hallway in gentle color, Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. "It is over," he said softly. "The danger. The lies. All of it." Emilia smiled. "Then what happens now?" Adrian held her close, his voice filled with promise. "Now," he said, "we choose the future together." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the fading remnants of fear and the rising glow of a new day, Emilia realized that every step she had taken, every risk she had faced, had led her here. Not as a waitress. Not as a witness. But as someone finally seen, finally valued, and finally loved.